Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, very, very good question.
Yeah, this is a very good question.
Oh my gosh. That's such a good question.
Oh, that's a great question.
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question, Zanger.
It's a great question. It's a great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. Really good question.
Gosh, this question to me, I hate this question.
That's a loaded question. but okay.
It's been a minute since I worked this machine. Sitting here popping out. You go live, and I'm showing up. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta put this here. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. It's been a minute since we've been live. I mean, where do we begin with this, right? Doug Zanger, founder, editor-in-chief, Indie Agency News. The Brief. Build the global home for independent agencies. Our mission is to serve independent agencies and the brilliant people behind them. Our goal is more visibility for indies and more choice for marketers. For those of you who are members, the last on that little, I think it's funny video. Christian Whitheiler in Lexington, Cornet. And so I'm wearing the Kentucky hat as a bit of an homage to them. Not going to lie, it was the closest hat I had. That was closest to me. So it's Kentucky Day. There we go. Go Wildcats. Yeah. So we were in Vegas last week, London International Awards, the judging for that. So we'll have indie results and then other indie stuff coming up from that. Before that, I can't even keep track anymore. But we're trying to get back on a more regular schedule. Today is about indie thinking, and we'll get to our guests here in a second. But first, we've got stuff brewing. Our first top 40. This is our awards scheme, as we like to say. So this is our awards program, our top 40. We're going to be live streaming places 40 through 4 next week. So we'll have a live stream Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We'll get more information out to you on that. But then the week after, on Monday, the 21st, we're going to be in New York. The top 3, the agencies are based in New York. So we bring the show to you. And this time we'll be bringing the show to New York Monday, the 21st at the Delancey Lower East Side. I want to thank Avid Exchange so much for supporting the top 40 in our first one. You know what? They're taking a little bit of a flyer on us. And I really appreciate it. Really appreciate the team over at Avid Exchange. Now, here's the thing about how we look at partnerships here at Indie Agency News. We could take anybody's money, but that's not how we roll. We want to make sure that the partners that we bring in are working with independent agencies, that they're additive to the business goals for independent agencies, and they need to prove it. So we actually ask our potential partners to give us 3 references so that we can go out and talk to them and find out what they are doing that are helping independent agencies. And Avid Exchange, we have several Indie Agency News members who use Avid Exchange, and they are very, very pleased with it. It is a much more efficient accounts payable process. And there are a bunch of other products in there. So we come to you when we bring a partner in, a preferred partner. We come to it with a stamp of approval, and we want you to get to know Avid Exchange, and we will have more preferred partners coming up as we continue to vet them. And they are generously sponsoring this top 40, including our event here at the Delancey. If you're in New York, FMJZ, FM radio, listening to Jay-Z. I don't know. Okay, that's horrible. You can see a pretty wide swath of prices here, $59 to $35,000. I'll explain why. If you're an Indie Agency News member, $59. If you're not an Indie Agency News member, but you are an indie at an indie agency, $89. If you work for a holding company, $1,299. That's a bargain. You go to Cannes, you spend $5,000 to go to Cannes. This is better and it's cheaper. If you want a table of 10 for a holding company, that's $15,000. And you're like, wait a second, the math? That means $1,500 per. Yeah, you've done tables for $30,000. We don't really have tables, but if you want to buy one, that's cool. And then if Sir Martin, if you'd like to come, Sir Martin Sorrell, we have a good relationship. I have to say, this is a little bit of, a little bit of a joke. a lot of bit of a joke, but Sir Martin and I have had great conversations over the years. I really like him. And Sir Martin, if you'd like to show up, 35 grand. I know it seems like a lot, but I think I think that you'll enjoy it. So that is on the 21st. A rule, it's so funny. Rule number 1 here for everything is to have fun. So we're having some fun with that. We're also working on some other events starting in 2025. We also have some other things. 2024 was just trying to figure some of this shit out. And we figured some things out. Most importantly is that we're very, very grateful for our almost 150 members, agencies and companies who have joined us as members. You will understand more about the benefits of Indie Agency News. It's a visibility platform. It's an editorial platform. It's also a consulting platform as well. But the biggest thing is raising your visibility no matter where it is, helping you build some more confidence in telling your story, and being part of this community. Another piece of this community, Christian Stein from Stone Owl, as we like to call it. That's the Philadelphia version for you. Christian Stein and Raphael McMaster. So Christian joined as a member for Stone Owl, and Raphael, I'm first getting to meet. We were scrambling to get on the, and he's like, "Nice to meet you." And I'm like, "I don't have time for pleasantries, Raphael." But gentlemen, I want to thank you both. First of all, Christian, thank you so much for your support of Indie Agency News and this mission. I want you both to go into a little bit on your backgrounds and the pathway to where we landed with Resin Lab, and we're going to dig into it in a second. So give us the thumbnail.
All right. So thanks for having us. I'll start. So my track record is basically agencies around the world, agency life, Canada, Europe, LA, New York. And then in 2022, I decided to leave the agency world and set up my own brand strategy consulting company called Stone Owl. And as of June of this year, I relocated that business from the East Coast back to the West Coast to Hermosa Beach. And that's where I by a really interesting, there's an interesting story behind how Raphael and I met. I've been kind of noodling on an idea when I was still in Connecticut of this place where brands could come and hang out with younger generations and kind of co-create with them and ideate with them. And we'll get into that, I'm sure. But that was sort of how Raphael and I kind of met and started some interesting conversations, and which is why we're both sitting here today talking about Resin Lab. But I'll let Raphael tell you his story.
Yeah, and you're both just really interesting cats, by the way. So I loved reading your bio, but Raphael, go ahead, because you're back. I mean, wow.
Yeah, my background's wild. And listen,
Christian, no offense, but
the magic happens quickly. So I don't know if he manifested me or we manifested but here we are together. So, my background as well as agency life started out at an agency called The Family, which is action sports representation for the top snowboarders, skaters, so on. They were acquired by Wasserman Media. Went on continued agency life, an agency in Irvine called Lucid Fusion, and then on to CAA for 5 years. Was a creative executive there. Left that about 8 years ago because I wanted to rededicate my life to purpose, to transformation, to impact. And it's been amazing. And so in that process, created our nonprofit, which is Indivisible Arts. It's a division sign with an X through it, as in no division, as in unity. It was drawn by a 7-year-old because we were teaching them how to manifest things, how to transform things through their intention. And his thing he was trying to achieve was he didn't want to hate math so much. He hated math. So the symbol he drew, because we do it in total intention practice, very Joe Dispenza, visualization, elevated emotion, all those things. And he draws the symbol as this division sign with an X through it, as in to not dislike math. And we took it as our logo, I think 7 years ago.
Yeah, there we go.
So this is what we're all about, which is, starting with this next generation, these next 2 generations, Gen Z and Gen A. Good for Gen A, right? They got the alpha. That's a good pull. They got lucky on that one. Better than being Gen Beta.
I'm straight up X. So
Yeah.
in so many ways.
So so we're a 501c3 nonprofit,
Right.
right? Transforming lives through the power of consciousness and creativity. What does that mean exactly? Well,
Right.
there's this universal truth that when it comes to mental health, there is no other. It's something that connects and affects us all.
Yes.
Doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what you do, or who you love. Mental health and that journey from the head to the heart, from consciousness to creativity, is a journey that we're all on. And when we walk that path together, it sure is a heck of a lot more fun, a lot more supportive, a lot more possible.
Right. And here's one of the, I mean, obviously one of the many things I love is that, broadly we say that you're in the Los Angeles area, but the fact is that you're really focused in on South Bay. Talk a little bit about South Bay and why it's important because when I look at, East LA, obviously really diverse. When we look at South Central, obviously, we don't really talk about South Bay as much as probably we should, but it's such a unique and interesting place that takes pieces from what someone traditionally would say is Los Angeles, but it has its own thing and it has its own special way of approaching things.
Yeah, here's what's so interesting, right? So no culture exports its culture more than the United States. No state more than California. No county more than LA County. This is the truth. South Bay, which is our little southwestern borough of LA County, is actually this unique geographical microcosm, this little miniature of LA County as a whole. And here's what I mean. We've got our beach cities, right? Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach. You've got the kind of old money, shall we say, PV. You've got Torrance, Hawthorne, Inglewood, San Pedro. These are all part of South Bay. Long Beach, right?
I mean, so think about what has come out of Long Beach. That is
LBC.
You're right, the LBC, baby.
From Sublime to Snoop, right? So, and it's so exciting, watching the closing ceremonies at the Olympics, because they fast forward to what's going to be coming here in 3.5 years, and it's there on the lifeguard tower, Billie Eilish with the Red Hot Chili Peppers with Snoop and Dre. It's going to pop off. We're going to be really proud of this. But so South Bay represents this petri dish that we feel confident. There's this concept called the square mile, right? That if you can prove change and impact with efficacy and sustainability within a square mile, then you can create a blueprint for that concept and effort to spread to other areas. So what we're on is currently about 70% of the way through completing the craft of this blueprint of the community social structure required to take a creative community laboratory, place it at the center of any community, have it connect to the nonprofits focused on families affected by cancer, families in the foster system, special needs, universal families, the schools, the high schools, and you create a web with the Creative Consciousness Center at the center of it. And now you've created a drumbeat that everybody can play along to. You've created a symphonic result of a community reflecting upon itself, its own understanding of itself through creativity and art, because you've created an engine and a network to facilitate that.
Right.
And by doing it through the youth, well, this is the DNA of our future, creatively, culturally, artistically. So then, are these youth going to be structured by consciousness, emotional resiliency tools, creativity, and art, or are they going to be structured by TikTok and P. Diddy?
Oh, God help us.
I knew you were having fun in there. We'll keep it moving.
I was like, oh shit. Let's move on. Let's get to resin. We're going to talk about the more and I'm using air quotes here, like businessy side of it. So Christian gave me a ton of great data, which we'll talk about here in a second. But I want to start very simply. Why did you start resin? Why did you start the resin lab? Why create this?
Sure. We'll talk about resin real quick as it being 7.5 years in, and then we'll talk real quick about Resin Lab, which is the specific program that we've developed. So resin in and of itself was created because I realized when I left agency world behind and I went to go volunteer for my daughter's elementary school that she had zero art teacher in your elementary school, which is
right.
insane.
I know. Yeah. I got it.
And then that was followed by realizing that at the time Hermosa Beach had 0 galleries. So I was looking to create an elegant solution that supported the community to have a community gallery, right, as well as to ensure all South Bay students that want access to art and art materials and training have access to it. So we've turned away 0 kids in almost 8 years, which is just fabulous and excellent. Props to our donors and supporters for making that possible.
Yep.
No,
I'm kidding.
Yeah. Right. So that's the first step, having Resin as this creative laboratory. Now, as it continues on, it's how do we create a win-win-win situation that allows brands to get access to authentic, qualitative feedback and ideas from youth, both Gen Z and Gen A, in a way where you're talking to the trendsetters, tastemakers, and influencers of the next generation. Why? Because that's what artists are. That's what artists are for their generation. And these are kids that have been trained specifically in creative process and creative practice by me and my team here, right? So, to get ideas from this youngest generation through a process and a structure that's designed to get results and really meaningful feedback, and not just like yes, wow, right? We realize this real natural win-win-win synergy. This is going to be a good win for the kids. It's great for the brands, and it's great for Resin Labs as a growing entity and indie agency.
Here's what I'm noticing about this particular style. So in this particular show that you had back in July, here's what's interesting. It feels as though I'm specifically looking at this piece on the left here. It's interesting. It feels as though that there is, I want to say, an 80s feel to it. In that there's an expressiveness, but there's also a melancholy.
Sure.
And it's very interesting to me that, and it's, this sculpture, same thing. There's a melancholy to it that does feel like, because the 80s were definitely a struggle in a lot of ways, particularly the AIDS epidemic and a lot of the things that were happening culturally, politically, emotionally during the 80s. So that's more of an observation than anything.
Sure.
But it feels, stylistically, I think you could argue it's somewhat really not, but I think the feel of it feels very 80s. And that's what's interesting about this generation, is that there is an angsty, and some people would say, well, the 90s were more angsty. It's like, well, yeah, they were, but you should have seen the 80s.
I mean, can we swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
I've sworn a million times already, please.
So I can't imagine what it'd be like to be inside the head of a 13-year-old. That would be fucked. Right?
Oh, yeah, well,
think about it. You made it through the pandemic.
Yeah.
You know that feeling we have sometimes, just that impending doom, like the other shoe's gonna drop, and I don't know where it comes from. It just resides back here and haunts me in the shower once every 4 days. Right? That impending doom. Well,
it's called Donald Trump, but please continue.
No swearing.
Right.
That feeling of doom was programmed into every single kid that went through pandemic and didn't have the words or understanding to deal with whatever the heck all this is. And they sat silently watching their parents and the words they were saying and the stuff they were saying, and those kids were 7 and 8. Well, and now they're 12, and that's in there. Right. So these kids are growing up with all the stuff we stress about, but throw on top of it, the combination of TikTok and fentanyl and coming out the other side of a pandemic, and this other feeling of, we always tell them, listen, you guys are going to be the generation to help save the world, right? Yeah. You guys are going to be
about us too, Gen X,
right? And so we're saying it to this young generation, and they're like, man, that's a lot of pressure.
Right.
That's a lot of pressure to put on us. I'm just trying to make it through 6th grade math.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I would not, that's part of why I'm so dedicated in our nonprofit to changing lives, saving lives. I can say confidently we've saved a lot of lives here.
No, I get it.
This generation needs our support,
Yep.
As
You'll
much as
have
any-
about 10 minutes. So I want to move on to Resin Lab. And Christian, this data, it's interesting because when we look at data, we have some preconceived ideas. We know, oh, it's big. We know it's desirable. All of the things that generationally the three of us have experienced over time. And it is the same, I would say the same trappings of it, saying it's a huge audience with a bunch of spending power. Let's talk about why this generation is so important to marketers. Let's start there, Christian, and then I want to dig in specifics to Resin Lab.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the data is the key, right? I mean, you know, in one sense, when you realize that this generation, which is basically talking specifically alpha, which is anyone born 2010 till like through today, you know, and you can add on Gen Z on top of that, but just Gen Alpha, I mean, they have $45 a day being spent of their own money, which
okay, so that's interesting. I've never heard it put
sorry, $45 per week of their own money being
okay.
spent.
Yeah,
right?
that's interesting. I've never heard it put like that.
$50 billion a year of money. So if you're a marketer and you want your brand to be not just future proof, but relevant, you know, in 5, 7, 10 years, I mean, I think it's absolutely paramount that you focus on winning with this audience. And to do that, you need to actually engage with them. And I think, you know, what Raphael's built in the program, you know, I've kind of lived it firsthand with my son, who is Gen Alpha. He's turning 10 in a couple months, and you know, all the stuff that Raphael talked about, that angst, the pandemic, you know, all these things. What is incredible though is the creativity that lives within these kids, and the way that Raphael and his team here are able to let that come out in meaningful ways. And that was kind of like when I got to Hermosa, and my son, you know, did a week of the summer program here, and I walked in after to pick him up, and I went up to Raphael. I was like, dude, we got to talk, because what I've seen, the impact that you've had in 1 week on my son and his ability to create is profound. You know, it was just like mind bending. So we ended up having a conversation, and that was sort of the genesis of, you know, me having this idea in Connecticut of like, you know, could we create something cool that brands could come and hang out with these kids and really like understand them better, because, you know, they are the future. They are going to save the world. We've fucked it up. Well, our parents probably fucked it up, and we just kind of lived with it.
Right.
And now like the future is in their hands, and brands, as we know, have the power to influence that. And so if you're a brand and you're like, well, I want to be, you know, impacting the world or having a positive footprint down the road, or just be around in 10 years, like, you got to get smart. $50 billion on the table, you know, and that's only going to grow. That you need to start engaging with these kids in a meaningful way, and really letting them co-create with you. And whether that's marketing, whether that's product, whether that's, you know, how you're designing for the circular economy. If you're IKEA, you know, is it a bunch of 50-year-olds in a room trying to figure out how you're going to solve, like, you know, circular economy issues? Or is it a bunch of like 13 to 20-year-olds in a room who are actually thinking about problems in a different way and solving problems in a different way, than we would?
Okay, so a few things rolling around this weird brain of mine. So there are a couple things. Number one, and this is more of an observation. We have an issue with institutions and lack of trust in institutions, and brands have replaced that. I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. I will say that a brand exists for maximizing shareholder value. I will leave that there. So we have some work to do in a lot of areas on that. So please register to vote for Kamala. And then here's another thing I noticed, which is interesting. So I think about our generation, or my generation, Gen X. And here's what was interesting. 85% of Gen Alpha's wallets are going into 3 categories: tech and digital entertainment, food and beverage, fashion and apparel. Now, during my heyday, and I classify these as low to mid threshold categories. What I mean by that is the threshold to get to somebody to act is lower when it comes to food and beverage. Digital entertainment, lower threshold. Fashion and apparel could be lower, could be mid threshold. When I was coming up, we all wanted cars. Those are high threshold products. And those are high threshold categories. So the challenge, as I can see it for a brand, is that you're now in these low and mid threshold categories, and very, very, very different, and also very, very confusing. The other data point that you threw in there was 65% of GenZalphas care about diversity, equity, inclusion, concerned about sustainability, authenticity. There are more data points that need to be, we need more data on it. However, the data that we have does point to this. It's both practical and anecdotal at the same time. So let's talk about those numbers and then why Resin Lab matters for marketers and for brands.
I think the number one thing that through all of that is authenticity, right?
Sure.
This generation actually wants authentic things. They don't like, ads with celebrities and long, big brand films. They're not into that, right? It's quick, it's snappy.
Manifesto, Christian.
It's raw.
Manifesto!
Yeah, we don't do manifesto films, but the point is that, you can't have 30-year-old, 40-year-olds creating content for this generation. Like they just call bullshit on it, right? It needs to be created by them for them. And that's where I think the magic of what we're building here delivers for brands is the ability to get this, not just the insights, but the actual creative output. So if you're a sneaker brand, right? Like, and you want to do a collab with us, let the kids design the shoe and let the kids design the marketing, which will probably be very digital centric, right? That's going to connect with their audience and going to get you traction. If you're a snack brand, or a beauty brand, let's say you're a beauty brand, like do some, get us to make some how-to videos, some hack videos. These are the things that these kids consume. And I see it because my son is one of them, they watch YouTube nonstop. And it's all hacks, how-tos, things
Reels.
like that.
Instagram Reels in this family.
But it's it's the authenticity side of it that matters, right?
Right.
Yeah, this GenZalpha doesn't just want authenticity; they're deeply allergic. They're immediately allergic to anything that's trying too hard. Well, how do you not try as a brand? Well, then you have to be it. Well, how do you be it? You have to be really, really informed from a compass. And the challenge about the compass of GenZalpha, well, it's ever-changing, quickly evolving, adaptive by nature. What's cool right now, if I'm saying some stuff that's a comment on what the kids are talking about on TikTok and I'm 6 weeks late,
right?
Like that won't fly, right?
Might as well be 6 years late. Yeah.
Right. So it's moving so fast that, I'm on some 21 Jump Street in that I spend, hours and hours a day with these 12 to 22-year-olds just hanging out and understanding what they're talking about. And I'll be honest, unless I stay on top of it, then I turn around and I don't understand half the stuff they're talking about because it moves so quickly. So to have a thumb on the pulse of a brand, or for brands, the thumb on the pulse of a culture, generation, that's part of what this Resin Lab represents, right? And not just from them taking in content and but creating it and what's resonating with them. Where are they going with it? How do you get to the DNA of a culture? You understand what the art's about, because that's a reflection of creatively their DNA.
Right. Hello, fellow students. Love that meme. We got a couple minutes left. Let's net this on the brand side. Why should a brand be engaging with all of you?
Well, as I've said, I think the reality is if you actually, you want to be relevant, you need to actually engage with this audience and help them create your brand.
So you're basically inviting brands to come to Southern California to hang out.
100%. Yeah.
It's
an amazing space.
That's here. It's like, hey, you're a brand in Boston. It's February. You want to come to You want to come to SoCal for a few days?
It's gorgeous here. Listen, Resin Labs is 2 blocks from the beach.
Yep.
We'll show you a great time. 100% of the people that have walked through this space have said the same thing. I've never seen anything like this.
Yes.
From the upstairs with the music studio, fashion lab, downstairs spray paint alley, photography, 3D VR, a room full of kids doing consciousness and Jedi mind training is what we tell them.
Sure.
And what they're into. It's a cool scene.
But here's the other thing. Again, you're supporting Indivisible Arts, 501c3. You are doing good for your bottom line. You're also doing good for good's sake, because people should do good anyway. One would think. So who's a marketer you would love to have come down? I'm going to put you on the spot, a little thought experiment like we do on Meet an Indie Agency. Who's a marketer you'd love to come participate in Resin Lab? Come on.
I'd love for Nike to come and hang out with us.
Okay.
Adobe.
Yeah, Adobe's a really interesting one. That one to me gets me
Marshall
so excited.
Gibson Fender.
Marshall Gibson Fender. Okay.
Right. Nikon.
What about? Oh, let me think.
IKEA.
Target would be a good one.
Yeah.
Target would be a great one.
It's the best toy store out there.
Right.
They figured that one out.
Right.
That's my
Old
kid's
Country
favorite
buffet.
toy.
No, I'm kidding. Sizzler. Do you still have Sizzlers down there?
I don't believe so.
No.
Oh, I think there's one over by Fox Hills.
Long John Silver's.
Okay, there you go. That's fine. That's fine. Gentlemen, this is cool. Like, this is cool, but it's also just, this is just good. This is just really good, interesting stuff. It's relevant for brands. It's relevant for growing this generation, allowing them, here's the thing, allowing them to think, allowing them to express themselves. Mm-hmm. And you know what? If they end up getting into this industry, it'll make us all better. I think we all know that. Final word from the two of you. You got a couple of seconds to shamelessly self-promote. Go.
This generation needs us more than ever, more than any generation. What they need our support in is mental health and creativity, the head and the heart. Come connect to them, their ideas, their authenticity. Come connect to Resin Labs and what we're doing. And by doing so, you'll be connecting to the authenticity of this next generation. We want to see you there. We want to walk that path with you.
Christian, anything to add?
Nothing to add.
All right, cosign. I like it. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Christian, again, thank you so much for supporting Indie Agency News and this mission. I'd mentioned we're going to tease a little something. We're working on something called Indies Only. Full day. I think we might have to do one in the South Bay. So
yeah.
There you go.
Let you know if you need a place to host it.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
I like where your head's at.
Yeah. I'm feeling it. All right, Christian, Raphael, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to put you backstage, so do not go away. I'll catch you on the backside as I wrap this up. Thanks so much.
Lasers.
All right. And thank you to everybody again. October 21st, New York, the town so nice. They named it twice. Top 40. We're awarding our gold, our silver, our bronze. There are 3 agencies in New York. Who are they? You won't know until you get there. Tickets start at $59. If you're Sir Martin Sorrell, it costs $35,000. On behalf of everybody at Indie Agency News, I'm Doug Zanger. Yeah, you can hear the windows being replaced in the studio. That's fun. Great timing. Tomorrow, Meet an Indie Agency. Yes, and more coming up. Just keep us on LinkedIn and beyond. We'll see everybody later. Thanks so much.